Hello, Frizzle fangirls! If you don't identify as a fangirl, that's okay, but I must inform you that when you decided to click on this video, you made a choice, and you became an honorary fangirl. My biggest regret with this book is not reading it sooner. But Chloe, why didn't you read this book sooner? Great question. It was because I never found a review that made me want to read the book. Let me tell you how I choose which books I want to read. If I don't think a book has a potential of being a 5-star read for me, I don't start it. Every single book, I start out excited for it and with the highest of hopes. I'm giving every single one of my reads that chance. And I watch a lot of book reviews, including book reviews of the ACOTAR series because there's so many of them out there, and I never came across one that pitched the book in a way that made me excited to read it. From the book reviews I watched for the series, here are my expectations. It's a very guilty pleasure kind of book, not much depth to it, a little bit trashy, and there's lots of spicy smut. And some romance. That's good. You know, you can fangirl over it. Great fan art out there for that. And then not much of anything else. So you might be asking now, Chloe, why did you pick up this book? Seems like the things you just said means you didn't. But then I stumbled across these ridiculously long and extensive plot reviews by the channel Carrie Can Read. Definitely recommend her. She's great and entertaining. And I had already decided that I was never going to read the series, so I didn't really care about it either way. But one day I needed something long to put on in the background while I did mindless computer tasks for something else, and I decided to put on the plot summary of ACOTAR. So I listened to the entire plot summary of book 1, and I got to the end of it, and I was like, well, that was a really entertaining and well done summary video, but I still have no desire to read this book, you know? And then later, I went to the summary video for book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury, and I got like half an hour into part 1 of that video. And then I realized, I want to know how this book ends. And so, I stopped watching the summary video, and I checked out this book from the library. I was still apprehensive about this book because I don't really love smut in books, and if that's all this book was going to be, then I don't know how much I was going to enjoy it. But I was hooked on the plot, and I had to know what happened next. And you know what? I really enjoyed this book. It's really well written, and I legitimately do not understand where all the haters come from. There's nothing particularly terrible about this book. Maybe all the haters are hating on book 1. I don't know. Maybe they're hating on it because they're expecting something that's more fast-paced and less cheesy, because this book is slow-paced and has lots of cheesy moments. I mean, there's an entire flirting text montage using magical pieces of paper. But like, in my opinion, this book has hype for a reason, and it's not overhyped. It's the adequate amount. So this video is a letter to my past self. Why you should read 𝐿𝐿𝐄𝐒. Skip ACOTAR, it's fine. Just jump in right to book 2, it gives you enough context to figure out what's happening. Even without that plot summary video of book 1, I would have been just fine here. Where this book shines is Feyre, our main character's arc. The romance is good, but this is even better. This book is remarkably emotionally mature. Why remarkably? Because my expectations for the book was that it would read like young adult level of maturity, but with sex scenes thrown in, so we have to market it as adult. No, it emotionally feels like adult. There's some serious topics and some seriously well done character arcs related to those topics here. Because at the end of book 1, Feyre went through some seriously traumatic experiences. So did most of the other characters, you know, the climax of the action book, etc. So then book 2 opens with her not being able to sleep through the night, with her waking up every single night and throwing up, with her being seriously triggered by all of these little things and feeling so depressed all the time. She's not doing well emotionally or physically. And her fiancé from book 1, Tamlin, isn't handling this well. He's dealing with his own trauma at the same time, and he's just doing all the wrong things and making it way harder for her to recover. And that's another thing that I was really impressed with about this book is the maturity when talking about Tamlin. If you know anything about this series, you know that Tamlin is the love interest, but Rhysand is endgame. That's the one everyone ships her with. And I thought this book did such a good job at explaining to us and characterizing why Feyre and Tamlin were a really good match for book 1. But because of the events of book 1, they both grew and changed in different ways and those ways brought them into less compatibility, and now they are not a good couple because of this. Which is just such a refreshing take, because some complaints I've heard about this series is that you get one love interest in book one and then an entirely different love interest for the rest of the series, and it kind of feels cheap, like what did you do with the last one? But I completely disagree with that criticism. This book sets it up so nicely, helping us understand why Feyre needs a new love interest. But in the end, I think the core of this book isn't that new romance with Rhysand. It's Feyre's character study. It's her slowly overcoming that trauma. Yes, with some help from Rhysand. He really does give her an environment where she can finally grow and have some stability. But a lot of the scenes of this book aren't them together. A lot of the scenes of this book are not about Rhysand. It's about Feyre coming to terms with the way that she's changed. Finding, again, her love for painting that she lost through all of her depression. It's about Feyre letting herself make friends and trust all these new people. It's about her slowly becoming more confident in herself and feeling more safe, and subsequently being able to sleep through the night and eat regularly. I would pitch this book as 55% slow character study of Feyre overcoming her trauma and making new friends. And then 35% romance between her and Rhysand, and then 10% the actual plot of the book, of the politics and preparing for war and the allies in the fairy courts. That really is not a focus here. The magic system is very soft. The political systems and machinations of the villains and their plans are somewhat convoluted and easy to find plot holes in. And I'll talk more about that later in the end in complaining about things I didn't like about this book. But switching back to things I really loved about this book, what about all the romance here? So going into this book, some of the expectations for the romance I had was, wow, we're soulmates, in love forever, insta-love, let's have sex. Which I wasn't really looking forward to. I mean, I had some hope. I had enough hope to start this book, and I was hooked on this plot. But I also had some realistic expectations from the reputation of this book. You know what that is? That's wrong. When people complain about the mates effect, which is your magical soulmate in this book, what world are you coming from here? Because it is not. Feyre and Rhysand meet and then instantly are like, we're mated, it's beautiful, forever love. No. This book is 500 pages of a slow burn romance. They start out acquaintances, and then they get a little bit of flirty banter, and then they slowly bond and become real friends, and then it organically and slowly and satisfyingly, deliciously blossoms into a romance. The relationship building is exceptionally well done, and the fated magical mates thing is not only kind of an afterthought, but also, when it is in the story, it's a source of tension and conflict and argument between them. It's something that makes their romance more difficult, not ridiculously easy. Mic drop, end of argument. You're allowed to hate the trope of fated mates when it's done poorly, but this is not one of those books, I'd say. I don't know, maybe when people are complaining about fated mates in this series, they're complaining about book 4 or something. I don't know, I haven't read that far. Okay, but now let's talk about the politics plot of this book, which I really felt wasn't done very well. Let me explain to you how boring the political subplots of this book was. At around 90% into this book, the character arc of Feyre and the relationship with Rhysand wrapped up very nicely, very satisfactorily. Everything was tied off there with a bow. Okay? Following? But I still had like 2 hours left on the audiobook, and then I put it down for like a day because I didn't have any motivation to keep reading. I was this close from DNFing, from not finishing this book after reading 90% of it. Because once the character arc and relationship was done, I was done with this book. I ended up finishing it just for completion's sake so I could give a full review here, but I didn't really enjoy it much. And then, considering all that, I was like, should I read book 3 now or go back and read book 1? Well, there isn't really gonna be much character development or relationship development after this, so am I interested in that? No. So of course I watched the 4-hour Carrie Cake's summary of book 3. It was fantastic. She makes it very entertaining, and it is much faster than listening to a 25-hour audiobook, so A+ to her. And I just did that because watching her videos are enjoyable, but also so that I can have conversations about the series with people and be more well-versed, because this is a series that I would love to discuss with people. I think it's fascinating how much love and hate these books have gotten, and how much everyone agrees that booktube is the best, and I'm glad I read it and have no desire in reading a worse version of it. So who would I recommend this book to? 1, my past self. Please, past Chloe, pick up this book sooner than you did. You waited years. People who love slow-paced character romance books. People who don't really care if there's a lot of politics, action, war, etc. in their fantasy book, but can stomach a little bit, because there is some. I think there is such a good comparison here to the Twilight books, in that it's more character-driven than plot-driven, but the plot does have some fantasy politics in it. The books are often too long and could be cut down, but if you're here to savor the character moments, that's what you're here for anyway. Something that is very highly hyped, and in some ways lives up to its reputation, and in some ways doesn't. In the end, I rated this book 4 stars, and its book tone is resolution blue, which means it's emotional and character-focused. If you want to join the monthly book club or get special exclusive videos and other perks, you can become a patron. I've got a link in the footnotes leading to that.